What's going on, everybody? It's Riley and I am back with a new video. This time I'm going to be doing a review of a manga series that I just recently read and caught up with. The series that I'm going to be talking about today is Delicious in Dungeon. This one has been going on for a little while, and I know it's somewhat popular. I was recommended it by a lot of people, and so last year during Right Stuff Anime's holiday sales, I went ahead and bought all of the existing volumes because they did have a sale on those. And then I think it was last month, March, volume 8 came out, and I was like, oh, I need to catch up because I haven't read any of it still. So 8 came out and I was like, you know what, I gotta catch up. I want to be up to date on this stuff, and I have a ton of series that I'm the same, like that I have all the existing volumes and I just haven't read them yet. So I'm trying to go through all that right now. So I've done that with this. I've done it with Cells at Work and Cells at Work Code Black. And I've done it also with Witch Hat Atelier. And then I don't know what the next one after this is going to be, but I'm going to have more that I'm going to do. So if there's any series like the ones that I mentioned that you'd like to hear me review, let me know and I'd be happy to put something up. But anyway, so I finally decided, after I finished my current releases stack of, you know, new manga releases that I needed to get through, and after I caught up with different ongoing stuff, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to jump into Delicious in Dungeon. Seems like something that's kind of lighthearted, something that's going to be easy to read. And I'm really glad that I jumped in because it's exactly that. It's an easy read. It's lighthearted. It's really fun stuff. And, you know, it was something good to help me to pass the time, and I really did enjoy it. So anyway, what is the series? So Delicious in Dungeon is a shonen manga by Ryoko Kui that basically it is a fantasy adventure type series, and it's very much kind of like an RPG type series. It feels like, you know, what it is when you play RPG games. You have these different classes of characters who are in a team, and one of their team members was actually eaten by the red dragon, which is supposed to be like the most fearsome monster in the dungeon. And so they go back into this dungeon to try and find their lost team member, try to find the dragon, kill it, and rescue their lost team member. Along the way, though, it also focuses a lot on food and cooking in this fantasy setting. So our team of 3 members initially starts out with Laios, who is what they call a tall man, basically humanoid but very tall. He is very interested in cooking. He wants to kill the monsters and eat them because, you know, he knows it's better nutrients and stuff than the stuff that they'll just find or that they can bring down in the dungeon and stuff like that. So he has an inherent interest in cooking and eating the monsters from the dungeon, even though the rest of the party is kind of not for it. His sister, Fallon, is the one who was eaten by the red dragon. So he's the one that's leading the group to go and find the dragon. The dragon is pictured back here, so that they can, you know, rescue her and bring her back. There's also Marcille, who is an elf. She is their mage. So she uses magic, utilizes different magics and stuff to fight the monsters and to heal them and different stuff like that. And then their third member was, or is Chilchuck. And Chilchuck is what they call a half-foot. So he is a full-grown adult, but he's actually looks like he's about a 10-year-old and stuff. So everyone kind of treats him like he's younger. He's kind of the thief of the group. He has pickpocket, locksmith skills, stuff like that. And then soon after the adventure begins, after they go into the dungeon and they start, you know, fighting monsters and stuff like that, they meet up with a dwarf named Senshi. And Senshi is a dwarf warrior who is also really interested in cooking and finding these monsters and cooking them. And he helps them out and is like, oh, let me, you know, help you to make food and stuff, and I'll keep you alive and I'll keep you nourished with good meals, better than what you'll have yourself. But I'm really interested in also finding that red dragon because I'd like to cook it and see what it tastes like. So these 4 wind up making up the main core group. And at the beginning of the series, it's very much episodic in that every chapter is kind of focused on a different monster that they find. So, you know, they'll find a walking mushroom, and then they find it, they kill or defeat the monster, and then they cook it and they make a dish out of it. And so there's that, and, you know, they'll fight different monsters. And on the back of each volume, they kind of show you what monsters you might find. So they've got, you know, the basilisk, green slime, huge scorpion, living armor, mandrake, man-eating plant. So each volume kind of gives you an idea of what monsters that they're going to be running into, and what they're going to wind up eating eventually. So there's more stuff. They run into orcs, golems, they run into different species. There's fish people, mermaids, and mermen, and different stuff like that. So each chapter kind of introduces more interesting mythological monsters and beasts that they wind up having to fight against. And it's just really interesting to see the artistic rendering and representation of these monsters, and as well to see what they do as far as how to defeat this monster, especially when it comes to something that's kind of strange and different, like living armor, and how they might find out, how they can prepare, cook, and eat this monster as well. So like I said, the first part of it is very episodic until you get to basically the culmination of the first part of the series, which is, of course, them searching for Fallon and the Red Dragon. And you do get to that point, and then from there, it kind of evolves into something a bit more. You start learning more about the characters' individual pasts and stuff until a certain point, you really don't know much about who these characters are. It's just a very general, this is a team of people. You don't know much about who they are, who they were, where they come from, and all that stuff. You just kind of know very vague things, but you start to learn about their past. You meet with other groups of explorers who are in the dungeon. The monsters become more ferocious, more dangerous and stuff, and then you're introduced to a lot more deep, a lot more dark plot lines and stuff start being introduced, and it winds up being not just about the idea of, and here's some mild spoilers, of just finding the Red Dragon, defeating it, and rescuing Fallon, but exploring the rest of the dungeon, what that really means, and what happens when you do complete exploring this dungeon. So it winds up becoming a lot more interesting than just the initial impression that I had, where I was like, oh, it's just, they're fighting and eating monsters, and it's a fun, relaxing series. It winds up getting a lot more into a deep plot about the dungeon itself, and what is in there, and what kind of is running the dungeon, I guess, is what I'd want to say without being too spoilery about it. But it's a lot of fun, and that's the main thing that drew me into it at first. Within the first chapter, I was like, man, this is a really fun series. It is pretty lighthearted initially, so it does really well to kind of get you into the series before it takes off and is a little bit more dark. So if you're interested in something like, I would reference Drifting Dragons, for instance, as one that kind of has that, it's a fantasy series that also focuses on cooking and eating and stuff. If you're interested in something like that, that's kind of what this one feels like. It's not like Toriko, where it's more focused on the shonen, like battle type stuff. At least in the beginning, it's more about the exploration and of the dungeon and stuff like that. And the fights are generally pretty quick, since you're only running into the monster for like a single chapter. It's generally, oh man, this thing can do this. How do we defeat it? Maybe I'll try this. This works. Now we're going to eat it. So it's pretty simple, at least at the beginning. Has really nice atmospheric artwork. It's not the most detailed and stuff. I'll try and find some good pages to show that. There's definitely really nice artwork throughout, very nice, shonen art. But what, for me, I really enjoyed about the artwork is how, without a doubt, at any given point, you feel like you are in a dungeon. The artist here really knows how to keep that kind of claustrophobic feeling that you're, these characters are stuck in this dungeon, and they're, working around different traps and obstacles and stuff. And the monsters are all also very interestingly designed to where they're, I guess the easy thing would just be to show the backs of volumes and stuff for that. But you get really fun monsters, really interesting designs with that stuff. Fishman, mermaid, tentacles. So it's always, that's another part of the series that's really fun for me as it goes forward, is just being able to explore the artist's rendition of these different creatures that they'll run into, like, you know, the wyvern and cockatrice, or cockatrice. And it has different monsters from different types of, you know, this one's very Asian inspired, and a lot of them are very much European inspired, like harpy and basilisk and stuff like that. So that's always one of the more fun aspects, is just finding out what's out there as far as these monsters and these interesting things. Like, what is this one called again? The baromet's literally a plant that looks like a goat. So you have a goat that's on top of a stalk, essentially. So I really enjoyed it. I read through all 8 of these volumes. They're pretty quick reads. I think I spread it across maybe a week's time total, but I took some breaks in between because I was working on some other stuff around the house. But it's a really quick read. Each volume probably knock out in an hour or so if you're sitting there just concentrating on reading it. And there are 8 volumes so far. Volume 8 is also, I believe, the most recent one in Japan. Volume 9 is coming out soon in Japan, and it was also solicited for the US. So we're not very far behind. The plot is going somewhere. Like I mentioned, they kind of wrap up the initial idea of finding the red dragon, and then it evolves and it starts opening up this new storyline. And so the plot has started to go towards this new storyline, and definitely by the point that we're at here in volume 8, there's more deeper multi-part stories that introduce a lot of new concepts and characters, and it not just focusing on the core group of characters that were introduced from the beginning. It's introducing a lot more concepts and stuff about the dungeon itself, and I think that it feels as if it could wrap up pretty soon within the next few volumes. I don't know, but I'm excited to follow it through to the end. I would recommend it if you are a fan of, you know, fantasy stuff, RPGs and something like that, then this is definitely something to check out. I'm not going to tell you expect the deepest, most intricate plot lines and the most interesting story in the world, but if you are interested in fantasy and you are someone who plays dungeon crawler games, maybe you're into D&D, this is something that you will have a good time checking out. 8 volumes so far from Yen Press. Each volume has a cover price of $15, so you can find it generally around $10, $11 per volume online, unless you wait for a sale like I did. As far as the maturity level goes, just in case you're thinking about having it for kids or something like that, it is rated T for teen. There's no real nudity. There's some monsters like the mermaids and the harpies and the... there's another monster, dryads, who appear nude. But aside from that, there's no nudity, there's no real sexual material. There's some mild violence as they are killing monsters and people are getting hurt, so that's the main thing, and there's not really any language. So if you're looking for something for your kids to read, you know, it is rated T for a purpose, and so I just wanted to put that out there. So yeah, hopefully this will inspire some people to go check it out. If you've been reading and enjoying Delicious in Dungeon, let me know down below. If you want me to review any other series that I've talked about or that you see around me, let me know, and check out my library videos. I have a library tour for my manga library, and I also have a library tour for my Western comics library. Let me know if there's anything in either of those that you would like to see me talk about in detail, and I'd be happy to make a video. If I haven't read it yet, then I'll try and read it so I can make a video. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you enjoyed this. Please subscribe if you have not already. I have content coming out semi-regularly where I, you know, talk about different series I've been reading and different things I've been picking up. And I have more big things in the works that I just need to do a little more reading or do a little more research for before I can actually put those bigger videos out. But again, thank you so much, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Later.